bombing of hospitals, of which only one remains operational out of 36 that existed before. There are a few that are partially working, but none that are fully working in reality. Displacement of millions of people from the north to the south, and now the south, Rafah, where over 1 million people have been displaced into, is being threatened with ground invasion, which would escalate this human crisis into untold proportions. We are talking about the most devastating humanitarian crisis in the world today. And we're talking about many of our U.S. representatives, our U.S. officials, defending and funding the said humanitarian crisis with our tax dollars. With us today are local Chicagoans, doctors, professionals, who have lost many, many loved ones in Gaza as a result of what is happening, including one family member here who lost 209 of his family in Gaza. 209 of the same family. This is devastation. This is mass murder. We also have with us a doctor who recently came from Gaza who can speak to the situation on the ground and what he saw. We are seeing starvation. Some call it a famine. I don't use that word because a famine happens naturally. This is induced famine. This is forced starvation. People are eating grass. People are malnourished. Medicines are not allowed in. Humanitarian supplies are not allowed in. And when they are, you have civilians, Israeli civilians, who create a human blockade to stop other humans from receiving this desperately needed supply, these desperately needed humanitarian supplies. We call on our elected officials to step up, to show responsibility, to recognize the humanity of these people, our families. We call on elected officials, whether in Congress, in the Senate or the House, whether the President of the United States, whether local officials, including the mayor of Orland Park, who recently told his community, his constituency, that is the largest Palestinian American community in the United States. He told them when they aired their angst to him, he said, if you don't like it here, find another country to go to. That's what he said. I now call to the podium William to discuss his family losses.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is William Asfour, A-S-F-O-U-R, is how you spell my last name. My family is from Gaza. I'm here to tell you that my family is in grave danger, and I need your help. 2 weeks ago, Israeli soldiers stormed into a Gaza hospital and took over 25 family members of mine, including men, women, and children. We have no idea if most are dead or alive. We haven't heard from them for 2 weeks. Some of my family members were released after a couple of days, but not before they were beaten badly by Israeli soldiers. In just the past few months, hundreds of my family members, 209 members of my family and loved ones have been killed by Israeli bombs, including a 3-month-old baby, which she's pictured over here, I believe. There she is. 3 months old, she was killed. She was born in August and died in November, or was killed in November. This is my 23-year-old cousin, Khalil Asfour, pictured over here. He was studying to be a software engineer and was set to graduate this year before he was sniped at a school he was sheltering at. The safe zone, they call it. In the past few months, all of my family members who were killed were bombed or shot by Israel in the area they said was a safe zone, south of Gaza. A lot were killed in their own homes, including children and women. All the houses belonging to my family have been destroyed by Israeli airstrikes. The Israeli army kidnapped my recently widowed aunt, her 5 children, one as young as 7 months old, after they pepper sprayed and assaulted her in Khan Yunis. She finally found them after 2 days at the school they were sheltering at. Just last week, 47-year-old relative of mine, Talal Asfour, was shot to death by Israeli snipers. He was inside a school he was sheltering at. So I'm asking the people of Chicago to help save my family from starvation, from thirst, and to reach out to Congressman Sean Casten, and President Joe Biden to force Israel to let food trucks into Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you, William. So correction on my part, the 209 family members is a number that includes the killed and kidnapped. And the kidnapping is a phenomenon that we're seeing. Individuals taken, we don't know where they go, we don't know why they're taken. Recently, 2 US citizens, as a matter of fact, from Lombard, Illinois, were kidnapped from their home in Gaza by Israeli forces, and their families still don't know where they are or what's happening to them. They include Barak and Hashim, 18 and 19 years old. They have been living there for a few years with their family members. They're US citizens. I now call to the podium Ala and Huda to discuss their family situation.
Thank you. My name is Ala, and I'm a husband, a dad, and a documentary filmmaker. 8 members of my family have been killed by Israeli bombs. I want the world to know that my 35-year-old Abdullah is my cousin who was killed. He was a father and he worked at the Department of Health. He was kidnapped by Israeli soldiers and no one has seen him since. We don't know where the Israeli soldiers took my cousin, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. My cousin Bilal is in the picture here. He was a cross-country athlete and trainer who proudly presented Palestine in sports and in sporting events around the world. This father, free with a heart of gold, was killed by an Israeli airstrike as he tried to rescue family from under the rubble. My aunt, her husband, and grandkids were killed by an Israeli airstrike while they slept in their home. I can't bring back the dead, so I'm asking for help with the living. I'm asking you, anyone listening or watching, to please help my family. Help my family and other Palestinian families survive by demanding a ceasefire. My parents in Gaza are now on the brink of starvation, and people are eating bird seed because no food can safely get in when Israel is still bombing. The only way to safely get food to Gaza and save my parents is to stop the bombs, is to call for a ceasefire. And Israel must stop asking people to evacuate. My 80 years old uncle can barely walk, and my mom can barely walk. How can they evacuate when they are injured or disabled? My name is Ala, it's A-L-A-A, last name Abu Sam'an, it's A-B-U-S-A-M-A-N.
My name is Huda Shubair, H-O-D-A-S-H-U-B-A-I-R. I'm a mom of 4 kids, and my family has been in Gaza for over 800 years. I'm here today to tell you that Israeli airstrikes and snipers killed my mom, my dad, my sister-in-law, my nephew, and my cousin's husband, who was 4 weeks old. My father was a retired professor who taught immunology and virology. My mom fought for women's rights. Why would Israel kill such beautiful souls? I hope Netanyahu is listening. I will never forgive him for killing my family. I will never forgive my president, Biden, for giving Israel weapons to kill my family in Gaza, and I will never vote for him again. My parents may have survived if ambulances were allowed to get to them, but the Israeli army blocked all ambulances for 13 days, so my parents never had a chance. The Israeli bomb that killed my parents also killed 2 other doctors, my uncle, the head of the anesthesia at Al-Shifa Hospital, and the kind and generous Dr. Hammam, my cousin's husband, a nephrologist who famously refused to leave Gaza because he wanted to stay and care for his patients. I have an audio of Dr. Hammam's interview before he was killed, if you want to hear it. I am devastated by the death and destruction Israel has brought on my family and 28,000 other Palestinians, but we have to focus on the living. My remaining family in Gaza have no clean water and no food because Israel is not allowing enough food trucks in. Will they also die a slow and painful death? A ceasefire is the only way we can save my family's life.
Thank you very much. And again, to emphasize, what we're seeing here, people are debating whether we should call it genocide. You can call it genocide, ethnic cleansing, war crimes. The reality is human beings, innocent civilians, and that's not disputed, are being killed en masse, are being made to suffer en masse, are denied medical recovery and aid en masse, are facing starvation en masse as mass punishment. And this is happening by a supposed civilized state that is an ally of another civilized state ourselves. And the world is watching. And I say to our elected officials, your duplicity, your double standard, your silence is complicit. I say to the media, your silence is complicit. And I thank the cameras that are here today. You're telling the story. This isn't propaganda. This isn't made up. Telling the truth is not propaganda. People have to go to TikTok and social media, which is being censored, to see these videos of what's happening on the ground. These are not propaganda videos. This is reality. And the media is not carrying it, and people don't know what's happening. And so they persist, and they support those who support this, because they don't know any better. Where is the fourth power in this country? Where's the media that tells the story? I want to bring now to the podium Nabil to discuss his family situation.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Nabil Al-Shrafa, Nabil, last name Alshurafa. I'll be referencing this poster here are the family members that are still alive that we can still save, and these are family members that have been killed. Just some of them. So my name is Nabil Al-Shrafa. I'm a medical researcher here in the Chicago area and a father to 3 amazing kids. But my family in Gaza, we never actually get to meet them because of the Israeli bomb, because they might not survive those Israeli bombs. Over 200 of my family members now have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. And believe it or not, they may actually be the lucky ones. Israel continues to bomb homes, hospitals, churches, schools, and even shelters that my family took shelter in. My surviving family members are living on 1 meal a day, and some of them even 1 piece of bread a day. To save my family, I met with Secretary Blinken, and I told him how Israel is continuing to bomb my families and not allowing food aid trucks to reach them in Gaza. I'd like to tell you, Secretary Blinken, that since I met you, my family in Gaza is in even a worse situation and even more danger from Israeli bombs and are near starvation. Thank you for nothing, President Biden and Secretary Blinken. This beautiful 5-year-old, Yusuf, my wife's first cousin, he was born the same month as my daughter, Naya. Little Yusuf now is in grave danger because he was asked to evacuate from his home and he's now homeless. My uncle owned the most beautiful hotel in Gaza, the Roots Hotel, down there. He poured his heart and soul into this hotel, and within seconds, Israel bombs it to smithereens. I'm here to call on the people of Chicago to please save my family, who are now on the brink of starvation in Gaza. Just recently, my wife's cousin, 40-year-old Bahat, was just killed by an Israeli airstrike while he was trying to fix the network tower, even though he was driving a clearly marked internet utility truck. So I'm here to call on Governor Pritzker and Congressman Sean Casten. My family and millions of your constituents have called for a ceasefire. A ceasefire is the only way to get food in because trucks just cannot get them in. And to meet with us to save our families and to also call for an immediate ceasefire now. I'm asking every Chicagoan, every American to call your governor, to call your congressperson and tell them we need a ceasefire now to save my family from Israel's deliberate starvation of the people I love. Thank you very much.
We're calling for a ceasefire, and there are elected officials that not only will not call for a ceasefire, but we have heard that certain groups that want to meet with certain elected officials are told by their staff, he won't meet with you if you bring up the word ceasefire. You can't say stop killing. That's offensive. To the governor of Illinois, I will name now, the governor of Illinois, it's offensive to hear the word ceasefire. The same governor who recently criticized the mayor who did the right thing by stepping up and standing with humanity. This isn't about politics. This isn't about this group or that group. This is about humanity. This is basic human decency. And he tipped the vote in the city council 23-23 to 24-23 for the historic ceasefire resolution that makes Chicagoans proud of their city. Governor needs to step up. This is shameful to say that we can't use that word. We can't say stop killing innocent human beings. That's offensive. This isn't about hating anyone. People say, oh, this is anti-Semitic. This is pro-Hamas. This is supporting Hamas. This is supporting families, their families. This is not hating anyone. This is loving life, loving your children, loving your father and mother and siblings. What Orwellian world are we living in? I call now to the podium a local doctor, Dr. Yasser, who was in Gaza recently as a first-hand witness to what is transpiring there.
Hi, my name is Dr. Yasser Saeed, spelled Y-A-S-S-E-R, last name is spelled S-A-I-D. Hi, I'm Dr. Saeed. I'm a father, a husband. I have 3 beautiful children at home, and I'm a pediatrician here in Chicago. And I'm absolutely appalled by the racist policies of the Biden administration that allow an avalanche of malnutrition and starvation committed by Israel on Gaza to happen. If these children were white children, would we stand idly by and let their little bodies wither away? If these were children, because they're children in Gaza and Sudan and the DRC, is that why it's okay that their little brown and black bodies will just turn into nothing, to dust? Let me tell you a little bit about what can happen to children when they starve. As the Israeli starvation continues, the first thing that will happen with Gazan children is they will get tummy aches and headaches. Gazan children hair will turn red, their skin will wither away, and their growth will stop because of the Israeli bombs. As the Israeli bombs continue and starvation is used as a weapon by Israel, Gazan children will be shorter than children in other countries. They will be less emotionally developed. They will not have secure attachments, and they will carry those scars for the rest of their lives. The word famine is used in a very particular context. To qualify for the definition of famine, Israel has to completely shut food and water and actively prevent it from going into Gaza, because it means that 40% of the population is acutely starving to qualify for that definition. Because of Israel's bombardment and siege with US support, 80%, 4 in 5 of the hungriest people in the entire world are in Gaza, an area the size of Metro Detroit. We demand that our fellow Chicagoans and Americans call for the Biden administration and Anthony Blinken to stop Israel's genocidal starvation of Gaza and stop using starvation as a weapon against the children of Gaza.
Tell the story, folks. Tell the story. Thank you very much.
A couple questions for
Yes.
Dr. Saeed, if possible. Dr. Saeed, can you tell us where you were in Gaza specifically, what you were doing, and the timeline?
So I need to correct that. So Dr. Fa'id Ahmed was in Gaza. I was not. I'm Palestinian from the West Bank. So that's a correction.
Dr. Thacker is out sick today.
Yeah, so that's what happened.
And did you recently travel to the West Bank or?
I have not been allowed in the West Bank in 5 years.
Explain why that.
No reason was given. I've just not been allowed to go. My children have never seen it.
Just one question about humanitarian aid. I know that, like on social media, there've been like ongoing asks to to support different efforts to send humanitarian aid. I mean, what's the status of the aid is it being able to get there? Is anything like, in terms of like what Chicagoans can do in terms of humanitarian aid, if they decide to help, through those measures, is it getting there?
No. So no food has been allowed into northern Gaza since January 23rd. There's enough flour by the US government to feed 1 million Gazans for a month, sitting in Israel, not allowed in, for over a month now. The food trucks aren't allowed in. Israel will return a food truck because it has an ultrasound machine, because they're worried the metal will be used to make weapons. Israel will return flour at the border because they're worried the flour can be mixed with things to make weapons. Israel will not allow feminine kits for feminine hygiene to be allowed in for Gazans. I'm not exactly sure why on that one. They won't allow the aid in, and Israel has 1,000 excuses every time, and they make it really difficult and make it take forever. It's starvation as a weapon, as documented by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, UNICEF, Relief Agency, and many, many others. It's just objective fact. They are using starvation as a weapon against Gaza.
What little aid has been allowed to trickle in is akin to Band-Aids on gushing wounds. And as a matter of fact, the same time that we're maybe allowing a few Band-Aids to come into the gushing wounds, we're giving machetes to the other side to keep hacking at those bodies that we're offering these little Band-Aids to. And this most recent Senate bill that approved or that voted in large numbers to approve money sent to Israel and so-called humanitarian aid to Palestine, billions, 17 billion sent to Israel, is exactly that. A few Band-Aids in this bill and a lot of big machetes in the bill. It's the Band-Aid and the machete. It makes no sense. And it's only, in my opinion, there for cover. If you really want this to stop, to make things clear and not cryptic, you have to stop the machetes. You have to seize the fire. That is how you help humans who are there from withering away in a genocide. So you stop the ceasefire, and then you allow humanitarian aid in to save these lives, medical aid in to save these lives. We're not even close to this happening. And as we speak, this is an unfolding crisis. This is not a crisis we talked about yesterday or last year or 75 years ago. This is today, happening right now. And we always ask. We asked in the 40s, where were we? Where were we when genocide was happening? And today we ask ourselves, as if it's a far removed question, where were our grandparents? Well, where are we today? And that's your same answer. Scratching your heads, thinking there's two sides to the story, worried about intimidation, bullying, and pressure. But people are waking up. Staffers are walking out in congressional offices and putting pressure on their bosses. Media people working in the newsrooms are pushing back on the producers and those who are telling certain lies to say we got to tell the story. And that's what we need more of.
And could you just speak to the challenges that you guys face when it comes to telling these stories versus the stories that we constantly hear about, the Israeli hostages, those remaining hostages? We hear all those stories, but there's a lot of challenges telling these stories. Could you just speak to that, please?
Well, it feels like erasure. I mean, when erasure, dehumanization basically is what it is. It happens in two ways. There's the assertion that you're not human enough, you're a human animal. You put up your kids as human shields because you're not a normal parent like everybody else on planet Earth. Those assertions dehumanize, and dehumanization is necessary to allow this to happen without much backlash. But at the same time, another form of dehumanization is erasure, omission. It's the opposite of assertion. Rather than assert that you're horrible, we omit your humanity, we omit your suffering, we omit your dead, we omit your children who are in famine and starvation. And by omitting that dehumanizes also. It needs to be reported on for what it is. We don't need to propagandize. We don't need to embellish. Just say, professionals know how to report. Report on the facts. Do not give in to any political pressure. We have to be able to tell the story so our public can understand what's happening and our public can move in the direction that befits their conscience. They're denied that opportunity right now. I don't think the American people are bad people. Even the ones who are doing nothing, it's not because they're bad. They're uninformed, they're misinformed. Information is not arriving. You don't know what's going on. And so that's what needs to change, my friend. And it's been a very frustrating reality for us to push back against this silence and against this assertion of dehumanization. Almost, it's like, yelling into an open desert. There's nobody to hear you.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
And I've had some discussions with the Palestinian community on this specific subject, but maybe for everyone else to hear. Can you talk about some of the difficulties in proving facts? I know that a lot of these buildings are in rubble. I know in New York, the Palestinian community there is having difficulty getting some of those stations to cover stuff because they can't get a death certificate, they can't get verification of some of these deaths. And then we'll start with that and then.
The numbers that we cite and the facts that we explain and describe are not from cair-Chicago. These are from what you would call neutral international organizations that have been entrusted with this information in every other crisis in the world. This is the World Health Organization. This is the United Nations and its agencies. This is even Israeli humanitarian not-for-profits like Bita Slim, as well as the Gaza Health Ministry, and as well as first-hand eyewitness accounts. All of these converge into the same conclusions. And then there's the videos, and there's the anecdotal evidence to add to the stats and to the numbers. So the facts are there beyond a reasonable doubt. The fact that, again, it goes back to what I was saying. We're still in this position where, did it happen, is it happening? It's akin to, say, the denial of the Holocaust. It's as offensive to deny that this is happening when you have all of this evidence, statistically, anecdotally, from all of these different groups, Muslim, Jewish, and neutral. It's sitting out there in the open. It's not disputed as much as it is covered up or ignored, or downplayed, or contextualized. And it's contextualized sometimes by one word, the magic word, Hamas. Okay, everything goes. Kill children, kill women. You flash the buzzword. And to oppose it, there's another buzzword that's flashed, and I think it's problematic. Anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitic to criticize Israel. It's anti-Semitic to criticize Netanyahu or the murderous, genocidal government that he runs, the most far-right coalition in its history. As someone who actually opposes anti-Semitism and on this podium decried anti-Semitism many a time, this is offensive to those of us who are civil rights activists, who understand what bigotry is, who understand what Islamophobia and anti-Semitism is. It's not Islamophobic to decry the policies of Iran, a Muslim country, or Pakistan, or Egypt, or any other country. It's not Islamophobic to criticize a foreign leader and his policies or his military actions. It isn't anti-Semitic to criticize Netanyahu or his government or his military. It is responsible. It is honest. It is what we must do. It is what we would do had it been Iran. Had it been the other way around. And guess what? Had it been the other way around, I would have been standing here criticizing the Arab Palestinian Muslim side and standing with the Israeli Jewish side. Because it's not about tribe for me. It's about justice. It's about humans, regardless of where they belong on the scale of identity. That's not what we stand for. We stand for principles and values, not groups and identities.
Is there anyone here who's related to the brothers, Borak and?
We have a community member who is, but unfortunately she couldn't be with us today.
Have you had any update on what's happening with them?
Just, it's unknown. It's unknown. You don't know. You disappear and you don't know. So she couldn't be here with us. Dr. Thayer, Dr. Yasser's colleague, and I apologize for the confusion, was the one who was in Gaza. He couldn't be here either, but everything that was mentioned was relayed from his firsthand witness account to his colleagues.
Can I follow up on the first question I asked you? And I apologize, I just need to reframe it a little bit differently, but everything you said was valid and important information. But I think more specifically on the micro level, if someone here in Chicago says that one of their family members was killed.
Yeah.
And then they go to either a city, state, federal official, elected official, and try to, bring this information to them, even coming to the media. One of those elected officials or a media member might say, well, do you have a death certificate? And basically what I was asking is, how difficult is it for someone in Chicago who has a family member killed in Gaza to prove that to somebody?
It's akin to proving you exist. I mean, prove to me that you exist. Because here's the thing, and this is where the misinformation and disinformation and lack of information is so important for us to fill that void. These people don't even have citizenship, let alone a death certificate. These people are denied existence as you and I know it. They're denied the rights that privileges that you and I have. They're denied a state. They're denied a national identity. They're denied their history. They're denied their schooling and their movement, their free movement, their family associations, and their death certificate. And so to begin with a death certificate is like beginning with October 7th. It's to ignore the context and the history that is so important to understanding the story. This is not a normal group of people in the sense that they live normally. This is a group of people that's uniquely disenfranchised in the world, uniquely. There are others in the world, but the extent to which this has happened needs to be understood and needs to be part of the story. To make a long story short, we're talking about a lack of institutions, a lack of ability to issue such things, because there's a lack of hospitals to begin with. The doctors are bombed, doctors are killed. Yes, I just say one last thing. I don't know if this is known to the media, but this is a crisis in which medical personnel are killed to such a degree unseen in recent times. Hundreds of them. And hundreds of UN officials. UN officials. I mean, if you have the UN logo on your back, or the crescent or the cross, some medical insignia, that's universally known to be off limits. But we're talking about not one or two or three accidents, hundreds killed. Headquarters bombed. Offices bombed. Hospitals bombed. That's where the death certificates are, in the middle of this row.
I have one last important question, if you don't
I'd
mind.
like to answer your
Let's
question.
do it.
Please.
Because when talking about death, right here, I'd like to give the example of my wife's first cousin, Dr. Maysara Reyes. He's actually a Chevening scholar who went to London. I met him when we were in London, and in King's College London, where he was getting his master's in women's and children's health. The thing about Gaza is everyone knows everyone. Their neighbor, you know your neighbors. This is what was so beautiful. I mean, I have memories in going to summer in Gaza, and what's so wonderful is everyone asks about the other neighbor. Everyone knows who lives in this street and the street across from you. So a lot of families know each other. So when someone is killed, right away, not just one person, it's not verified from one individual, it's verified from at least 100 sources. So when we received news that Dr. Maysara Reyes and his two siblings, Azza and Dr. Uraib and Azza Reyes, along with her 3 children, and her two parents, my wife's first uncle and his wife, when we received news, they were on the first floor, the first story, when Israel struck a 6-story building. This is my wife's grandma's cousin. She used to go there every summer. So they were on the first story, and now the 2 surviving members, Dr. Al-Maysara's brothers, Muhammad and Muhammad, were searching for their parents and siblings and nieces and nephews under the rubble. Very slowly, they found their father, they found their mother, they found one of the kids, and then 2 days later, as they were searching for their family members under the rubble, Israel strikes and kills them as well. So wiping out the entire family. And we have videos, so right away we have videos of the entire building. So you say, right now people are performing, we had over 1,000 amputations without anesthesia, and you're talking about ink and print to actually have a death certificate. It's just unbelievable. Even to ask that question, it's hurtful. And what's so concerning, I remember on CNN with Julia Chatterley, I had a a live interview. This was early on, and I told her that we had 4,500 killed, and immediately once you talk about killings of Palestinians, right away, media has to defend somehow and say, oh, it's Gaza Ministry of Health. We can't verify that. But there's no history of that Ministry of Health lying when it comes to number of deaths. And usually it's much more. The numbers that we're seeing now are saying 27,000, and that 10,000, there's probably even more 10,000 under the rubble that they didn't find. And what's even worse are those that are still alive. I mean, these people that were killed, they don't have to deal with starvation. They don't have to deal with the loss of their entire family. They don't have to deal with their entire building, their stores, their homes, all their history being wiped away. So it's, in some ways, these children their legs are getting amputated. They have to live through this. Their growth is being stunted by the lack of nutrition and food. Even some of the family members that were able to get out, kidney problems from the foods that they were eating, diseases that they're getting just from the lack of healthy, clean food and access to basic necessities of life. So I just want to address that because it's very hurtful when, and media continues to do this with our family, where it's like, you're Palestinian, you're killed, we're going to question it. But if an Israeli is killed, that's it. It doesn't matter, we're going to report it, whether it's verified or not, we're just going to say it. And again, there's discrimination here. It's just really, really not right.
Nabil, thank you so much. And just so you know, I only asked the question so that you can give the context to our listeners so that they can better understand.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.
And I do have one last question that I think really needs some clarification. And you touched on this, the closeness of the families in Gaza. It's unlike in the United States, where if there was an incident that happened in Chicago, I would be the only family member killed. In Gaza, not only is it deeply dense population already on its own, but these families are closer than the typical American style families, where they live together, they grow together, generations together. Do you want to touch on that? Because when you hear these numbers, 207 of the same family, sure, some of those are spread out over years, but there are some that are very hard numbers that have happened just within the last few months.
So thank you for acknowledging that. It's true. It's a part of their culture, Palestinian culture, which is often demonized and shown in a negative light and has so much beauty, is that stratification and that unity of the people together. And the families, as they grow out, in a nuclear way, like any family, they remain in contact and remain close-knit. So we're not talking about, when we say 200, we're not talking about father, mother, and 198 children. We're talking about cousins and second cousins and third cousins and uncles, and it's more like a clan. You might have a little bit of that in Ireland or Scotland and some other parts of the world, but it's definitely the culture in some Arab countries, including Palestine. The second thing I'll say is it's important to note about Gaza is that the population of Gaza, as it stands, is not just the native population of Gaza. It's also, to a large degree, the uprooted Palestinian population from other parts of historical Palestine in previous waves of violence, in previous waves of genocide, that pushed them into this concentration camp. Or I don't say open air prison, because prison means that you've done something wrong, that you're a criminal in some way. But these are normal human beings who have been put into this place, concentrated into this essential large camp. And so that needs to be known as well. So as they move today into Rafah from the north, this is yet another wave of the same people who have been uprooted before, being uprooted again from that camp into the lower part of the camp. And eventually may get to the point where, and that's my personal analysis and belief, the strategy is to push them out entirely, perhaps into the Sinai, make it Egypt's problem, make it an Arab problem. Let the optics of that play out. Let the Egyptians say we don't want them. Let them be now the villains and prove to the world that, see, even the Egyptians don't want them. But the point here is that they don't want to leave their land. They don't want to have to be pushed out. And those on the other side of the border in Egypt who support them understand that if they were to leave, they would never be allowed to come back. So it's a precarious position Israel is creating on purpose as a win-win for itself and a lose-lose for the other side. And that's what we have to see through. This is precisely the definition of genocide and ethnic cleansing. It is pushing out, I mean, look up the definitions in any source you like. It is precisely this. It's by force, by violence, pushing populations away from lands in order to cleanse them from them permanently. And that's what we're looking at right now. That's the real story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your presence. Thank you.